They say the truth will set you free. Nobody mentions what happens when the truth sits on a digital recorder for 6 months while your life burns down around you. I'm Daniel Reeves, 42 years old, and I learned that silence can be a weapon sharper than any accusation. My wife stood in our therapist's office 3 weeks ago and told a room full of people I had terrorized her for years. She painted me as a monster who controlled her every move, who screamed until neighbors called the police, who made her feel small enough to disappear. The therapist's face tightened with professional concern. Our friends leaned forward with that hungry look people get when a story confirms their worst suspicions. And I sat there, hands folded in my lap, saying nothing. Not because I couldn't defend myself. Because I had something better than words. I had recordings. Every conversation, every argument, every moment she claimed I had raged while she cowered. All of it captured in crystal clear audio on devices she never knew existed. Men over 40 understand something younger guys don't. When someone's building a narrative, you don't interrupt. You let them finish. You let them commit. Then you present the receipts. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. 3 months earlier, I was still the fool who believed in saving a marriage. My wife's name is Victoria, though everyone calls her Tori. We met at a charity auction in Boston 12 years ago. She worked in event planning. I ran a small but successful cybersecurity consulting firm. We weren't the couple that made strangers jealous, but we were solid. Or so I thought. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday in February. I came home early from a canceled client meeting and found her on the phone in our bedroom. The door was closed, which was unusual. Her voice carried that particular softness people use when they're talking to someone who matters. I stood in the hallway and listened. Not proud of it, but instinct doesn't ask permission. She was laughing, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. Musical and unguarded. Then she said something that stopped my breathing. I know. He wouldn't understand. He never understands anything that isn't on a screen. The words landed like stones in still water. Ripples spread outward, touching everything. I walked back downstairs, made noise with my keys, called out that I was home. By the time she came down, her face had rearranged itself into the pleasant mask I'd been seeing more often lately. "How's your day?" she asked, already moving toward the kitchen like the question was punctuation, not inquiry. "Normal," I said, watching her hands. They moved too quickly, putting dishes away that were already clean. "You?" "Same," she answered. "Just the usual chaos." That night I lay awake and replayed the conversation in my head. He wouldn't understand. The pronoun sat heavy. He meant me. Which meant she was comparing me to someone else. Someone who apparently did understand. Men my age have learned to trust the feeling in your gut when something shifts. We've been through enough to know the difference between paranoia and pattern recognition. This was pattern. The next morning, I did something I'd never done in 12 years of marriage. I ordered recording devices online. Small, professional grade, the kind law enforcement uses. Not because I wanted to spy. Because I needed to know if I was losing my mind or losing my wife. They arrived in discreet packaging 2 days later. I installed one in the living room, hidden inside a bookshelf speaker we never used. Another in the kitchen, tucked behind the microwave. A third in my home office where we sometimes talked about finances and future plans. I told myself I'd use them for a week, maybe 2, just to settle my nerves. That was February. By March, I had 12 hours of recordings. By April, 30. By May, I had a documentary of my marriage ending in real time, narrated by a woman I no longer recognized. The recordings were mundane at first. Grocery lists, television noise, her phone conversations with her sister about nothing important. Then on a Thursday afternoon in late March, I heard it. She was on the phone again, door closed, voice low. "I miss you too," she said. "It's harder than I thought. Being here. Pretending. A pause while the other person spoke. I know. Soon. I promise. We just need to be smart about it. Another pause, longer this time. Her laugh came through the speaker, soft and intimate. You're terrible. Stop making me smile when I'm supposed to be serious. My hand tightened around my coffee mug. The ceramic was warm but my skin felt cold. This wasn't speculation anymore. This was confirmation. She continued. Daniel's been distant lately. I think he suspects something but he won't ask. He never asks. He just retreats into his work and pretends everything's fine. Hearing your name spoken like that, like you're an obstacle instead of a partner, does something to a man. It rewires you. Suddenly every kind gesture you've made, every compromise, every quiet moment of trying to be good enough, all of it recontextualizes into evidence of your inadequacy. I saved the file. Labeled it with the date. Went back to work like my chest wasn't caving in. That night at dinner, she asked about my day. Fine, I said. You? Oh, she answered, pushing pasta around her plate. Same old routine. I wanted to slam my fist on the table. I wanted to play the recording right there and watch her face crumble. But something older and colder in me said wait. Don't react. Collect more. Men over 40 have been through enough workplace politics to know that premature accusations without overwhelming evidence just give the other side time to pivot. So I waited. And she kept talking. Over the next 2 months, the recordings painted a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't ignore. She talked to him almost daily. His name was Marcus. He worked in her office, some kind of creative director. Younger than me by 5 years. Funnier, apparently. More spontaneous. Everything I wasn't. She told him about our fights, except her version sounded nothing like what I remembered. In her telling, I was a tyrant. I controlled the finances, which was true only because she'd asked me to handle the bills after she overdrafted twice in our first year of marriage. I criticized her friends, which I'd never done, though I had once mentioned that her friend Jenna seemed to drink too much at dinner parties. I made her feel trapped, she said. Like she was living in a cage with a warden who monitored her every move. I listened to these recordings in my car during lunch breaks, parked in empty lots where no one could see my face. Each accusation was a small violence. Not because they were true, but because she believed them enough to say them out loud to another man. Or maybe she didn't believe them. Maybe she just needed a villain to justify what she was doing. The affair itself was emotional at first, at least from what I could gather. Long conversations about dreams and disappointments. Shared jokes I wasn't privy to. A growing intimacy that left less and less room for me. But by late April, the conversations shifted. They talked about meeting up. About stolen hours. About what it would be like when they didn't have to hide. On May 2nd, she told him she loved him. I was in my office when I heard it through the recording. My hands were on my keyboard, mid-sentence in an email to a client about firewall protocols. Her voice came through clear and certain. I love you, Marcus. I think I've loved you for a while now. His response was muffled, but her laugh told me everything. It was the laugh of someone unburdened. Free. That night she came home and kissed my cheek like she always did. Dinner smelled good, she said. I made your favorite. We ate chicken parmesan at our dining room table and talked about her sister's upcoming birthday. She smiled at me across the table. I smiled back. We were playing house. Both of us pretending. But only one of us knew the game was almost over. By mid-May, I had enough recordings to fill a hard drive. Conversations that proved the affair. Conversations where she twisted our marriage into something unrecognizable. And then, in late May, she made a choice that changed everything. She started telling people I was abusive. It began subtly. She mentioned to her sister on the phone that I'd yelled at her the night before. I hadn't. We'd had a quiet dinner and watched a movie. But in her version, I'd exploded over something minor, some dish left in the sink, and berated her until she cried. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Her sister's response was immediate. "That's not okay, Tori. You don't have to live like that." "I know," Victoria said, voice trembling. "I just don't know what to do." A week later, she told her friend Jenna something similar. She claimed I'd grabbed her arm during an argument. That I'd left a bruise. Jenna's voice on the recording was sharp with anger. "You need to document this. Take pictures. Tell someone." "I'm scared," Victoria said. "He's so careful. He never does it where anyone can see." I sat in my car and listened to that recording 3 times. My hands shook. Not from anger, though that was there, burning low and steady. From disbelief. She was building a case. Not just for the affair. For her exit strategy. If she could paint me as abusive, she'd have cover. Sympathy. A narrative that made her the hero and me the monster. And I'd have no defense. Because how do you prove a negative? How do you prove you didn't do something when the accusation alone is enough to convict you in the court of public opinion? That's when I understood what the recordings really were. Not evidence of an affair. Evidence of something far more dangerous. She was constructing a lie that could destroy my reputation, my business, my life. And she was doing it methodically, one conversation at a time. Men my age know what it means to lose everything. Divorce is expensive. Ugly. But survivable. Being labeled an abuser is different. That label follows you. It whispers in the background of every introduction. It costs you clients, friendships, trust. It's a scarlet letter that never fades. I couldn't let that happen. So I kept recording. And I waited. Because I knew something she didn't. The truth, when it's captured in someone's own voice, is irrefutable. And I had hours of it. The breaking point came in early June. Victoria suggested we see a therapist. At first, I thought maybe she was having second thoughts. Maybe she wanted to try to fix things. I was naive enough to hope. "We need help," she said one evening, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. "I think we're losing each other." I agreed. Of course I agreed. Part of me still wanted to save this. Still wanted to believe the woman I married was in there somewhere, buried under whoever this had become. We found a therapist named Dr. Ellen Crowley. She came highly recommended, specialized in couples therapy. Our first session was awkward but not hostile. We talked about communication. About expectations. About how we drifted apart. Dr. Crowley asked good questions. She seemed fair. I left that first session thinking maybe this could work. The second session was different. Victoria cried. She talked about feeling unheard, unseen. She said she'd tried for years to connect with me but I was always working, always distracted. Dr. Crowley nodded sympathetically. I sat there and took it, because some of it was true. I had been working a lot. I had been distracted. But distraction isn't abuse. The third session was when she dropped the bomb. She came prepared. She'd invited her sister and Jenna to sit in, which Dr. Crowley allowed for support. The room was crowded. Tense. And then Victoria started talking. She said I'd been verbally abusive for years. That I'd isolated her from friends. That I'd controlled the money so she felt trapped. That I'd screamed at her so many times she'd stopped counting. That just last week, I'd thrown a glass across the kitchen and it shattered inches from her head. Her voice broke. Her sister reached for her hand. Jenna glared at me like I was filth. Dr. Crowley's expression shifted. Professional concern hardened into judgment. And I sat there, listening to my wife dismantle me with lies, and said nothing. Because I knew. I knew that in my car, on a secure hard drive, I had every conversation she'd had in our house for the last 4 months. I had recordings of us eating dinner in silence. Of her laughing on the phone with Marcus. Of her plotting this exact moment. I had her own voice, clear and unedited, proving that none of what she was saying was true. So I didn't interrupt. I didn't defend. I let her finish. Dr. Crowley asked if I had anything to say. I looked at Victoria. Her eyes were red, convincing. I said, I'd like to schedule another session. Just the two of us. And I'd like to bring some materials that might help clarify things. Dr. Crowley agreed. We scheduled for the following week. As we left, Victoria's sister hugged her tight and whispered something I couldn't hear. Jenna brushed past me without a word. Victoria walked to the car in silence. At home, she went straight to the bedroom. I stayed downstairs and opened my laptop. I had 7 days to organize 4 months of recordings into something coherent. Something undeniable. I worked through the night. I created a timeline. I tagged every conversation where she spoke to Marcus. Every moment she fabricated abuse. Every casual mention of me that contradicted her public narrative. I burned it all to a USB drive. Labeled it. Backed it up in 3 separate locations. Then I sat back and stared at the ceiling. Part of me still didn't want to do this. Part of me wanted to walk into that therapist's office and beg her to just tell the truth. To stop. To remember who we used to be. But that part of me was tired. And small. And losing. The other part, the part that had learned over 40 years that sometimes you have to protect yourself even from people you love, that part was ready. The night before the session, Victoria made dinner. Spaghetti, garlic bread, salad. We ate like strangers. She asked how work was. Fine, I said. You? Good, she answered. Dr. Crowley thinks we're making progress. I nodded. Took another bite. Said nothing. That night I barely slept. I kept running through scenarios. What if the recordings weren't enough? What if people believed her anyway? What if I played them and she still found a way to twist it? But then I'd remember her voice on those files. Laughing with Marcus. Fabricating stories about bruises that didn't exist. Coaching herself on how to cry on cue. And I'd remember that the truth doesn't need a defense. It just needs a platform. The next morning, I put on a clean shirt. Dark slacks. I looked like a man going to a funeral. In a way, I was. I put the USB drive in my pocket. It was small and light, but it felt like a grenade. Victoria drove separately. She wanted to get there early, she said. Probably to brief Dr. Crowley. To set the stage. I arrived exactly on time. The waiting room was empty except for her. She didn't look at me. Dr. Crowley called us in. The office was small, neutral colors, soft lighting designed to make people feel safe enough to unravel. We sat in our usual spots. Dr. Crowley folded her hands and looked at me with that measured therapist gaze. Daniel, you mentioned you had some materials you wanted to share. I did, I said. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket and set it on the table between us. It sat there, small and black and final. Victoria's eyes flicked to it, then to me. Her expression didn't change, but I saw something tighten in her jaw. What is that? Dr. Crowley asked. Evidence, I said. Of what? Victoria asked. Her voice was careful. Of the truth, I answered. And then I started talking. I told Dr. Crowley that I needed her to listen to something before we continued. She glanced at Victoria, then back at me, and nodded slowly. The kind of nod therapists give when they're humoring you but have already decided which side they're on. I asked if she had a computer in the office. She did. A laptop on her desk, facing away from where we sat. I stood and walked over, USB drive in hand. Victoria shifted in her seat. I could feel her watching me, trying to calculate what I was doing. Dr. Crowley opened her laptop and I plugged in the drive. The folders appeared on screen, dated and labeled. April conversations. May conversations. Fabricated incidents. Affair timeline. Victoria's breathing changed. Just slightly. The kind of shift you only notice if you've slept next to someone for 12 years. Dr. Crowley looked at the folder names and her professional mask slipped for just a second. "What is this?" she asked. "Recordings," I said. "Of conversations that took place in our home over the last 4 months." Victoria stood up fast enough that her chair scraped against the floor. "You recorded me," she said. Her voice was high, disbelieving. "You recorded me without my knowledge." I turned to face her. "I did," I said. "Because 3 months ago, I came home early and heard you on the phone with someone. Saying I wouldn't understand. And I needed to know if I was imagining problems or if they were real." Her face went through several expressions in rapid sequence. Shock, anger, fear, and then something harder. Calculation. "This is illegal," she said. "You can't record someone without consent." "Actually, I can," I replied. "Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state for conversations you're part of. But these recordings were made in my own home, in common areas, and I wasn't recording phone calls. I was recording conversations that happened in shared spaces. I checked with a lawyer before I ever installed the devices. Everything here is admissible." Dr. Crowley held up a hand. "Let's all take a breath," she said. "Daniel, what exactly are you claiming these recordings prove?" "Everything," I said. "They prove that the abuse Victoria described never happened. They prove she's been having an emotional and likely physical affair. And they prove she's been systematically lying to her friends and family to justify it." Victoria's hands were shaking. "You're twisting this," she said. "You're making yourself the victim when you're the one who violated my privacy." I looked at Dr. Crowley. "May I play something?" I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. I clicked on a file dated May 23rd. The room filled with Victoria's voice, clear and unmistakable. She was on the phone with her friend Jenna. The conversation I'd heard 2 weeks ago. "I don't know how much longer I can do this, Ellen. Living with him. Pretending everything's fine when he's so controlling." Jenna's voice came through, tinny but audible. "What did he do now?" "He threw a glass at me last night. It shattered right next to my head." I was terrified. There was a pause. Jenna's voice dropped lower, serious. "Tori, you need to leave. This is escalating." "I know," Victoria said. "I know. I just need to be smart about it. I need to document everything." I stopped the recording. The silence in the office was absolute. I looked at Victoria. Her face had gone pale. "May 23rd, I said. "You told Jenna I threw a glass at you. Would you like to know what actually happened that night?" Dr. Crowley was staring at the laptop screen like it might explain itself. Victoria opened her mouth, closed it. I pulled up another file. This one was from the same night, May 23rd, time-stamped 2 hours before her call to Jenna. The recording played. The sound of our kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator. My voice asking if she wanted tea. Her voice saying yes, please. The clink of mugs. The sound of water boiling. We talked about a documentary we'd watched. About her sister's new job. Our voices were calm. Pleasant, even. There was no argument. No raised voices. No glass shattering. The recording ran for 47 minutes. The entire evening. We cleaned up dinner together. We talked about needing to replace the living room rug. I mentioned a client meeting the next day. She mentioned a work deadline. Then we went upstairs. That was it. I stopped the playback and looked at Dr. Crowley. "No glass," I said. "No fight. No terror. Just a quiet Tuesday night." Victoria's hands were clenched in her lap. She was staring at the floor. Dr. Crowley's expression had changed. The professional sympathy was gone. In its place was something sharper. Confusion, maybe. Or the beginning of anger at being used. Victoria, Dr. Crowley said carefully. Can you explain this discrepancy? Victoria looked up. Her eyes were wet but her jaw was set. He edited it, she said. He cut out the bad parts. I shook my head. I didn't. I can play the entire 4 hours if you want. From the moment I got home at 6:15 until we went to bed at 10:30. It's all here. Unedited. Continuous. She's lying. Victoria stood up. Her chair fell backward. You're the liar, she said. Her voice cracked. You're manipulating this whole thing. Making me look crazy. I stayed seated. Calm. Let me play another one, I said. This time I chose a file from early June. Her conversation with her sister, Rachel. The one where she claimed I'd grabbed her arm hard enough to leave a bruise. I let it play. Her voice, tearful and convincing. He grabbed me so hard, Rachel. I had to wear long sleeves to cover it. I'm scared of what he might do next. Her sister's voice, outraged. You need to take pictures. You need evidence. I will, Victoria said. I just need to figure out when. When he's not watching. I paused it. Then I pulled up the corresponding video file. I'd installed a small camera in the kitchen 3 weeks earlier, just in the corner by the window. It had a date and time stamp. The footage showed our kitchen on the day she claimed I'd grabbed her. I fast-forwarded through it. She was alone for most of the morning. I appeared around noon, made a sandwich, asked if she wanted anything. She said no. I left. The entire interaction lasted 3 minutes. I never touched her. Not her arm, not anywhere. I played the rest of the day's footage at double speed. We passed each other a few times. Exchanged words. At no point did I grab her. At no point did she react like someone who'd been hurt. Dr. Crowley watched the screen. Her hands were folded so tightly her knuckles were white. This is a lot to process, she said quietly. Victoria was crying now. Real tears, not the practiced kind. But I couldn't tell if they were from shame or from being caught. You don't understand, she said. You don't know what it's like living with him. The coldness. The distance. He's emotionally abusive even if he's not physical. I leaned forward. Then let's talk about emotional abuse, I said. I pulled up another folder. This one labeled Daniel Mentions. It was a compilation of every time Victoria had talked about me to someone else over the past 4 months. I'd spent 2 days editing it together, cutting out the silence and dead air but leaving every word intact. I played it. Her voice, to Marcus. Daniel's so wrapped up in his work he doesn't even notice I'm here half the time. Her voice, to Jenna. He criticizes everything I do. How I dress, how I cook, who I spend time with. Her voice, to her sister. He controls all the money. I have to ask permission for everything. He makes me feel like a child. Her voice, to Marcus again. I can't remember the last time he told me I was beautiful. Or that he loved me. I feel invisible. I stopped the playback. Now, I said, let me play what was actually happening during those time periods. I pulled up recordings from the same dates. In the first, I'd come home and told her the dinner she made was delicious. I'd asked about her day. I'd mentioned that she looked nice in the dress she was wearing. In the second, we'd talked about her friend group. I'd never criticized any of them. I'd asked if she wanted to invite Jenna over for dinner sometime. In the third, we'd discussed finances because she'd asked me to. She'd wanted to know if we could afford a vacation. I'd shown her our budget and said yes, we could. I'd asked where she wanted to go. In the fourth, I'd told her I loved her before leaving for work. The recording was clear. I could play dozens more like this, I said. Moments where I was trying to connect. Trying to be present. And she was telling people the opposite. Dr. Crowley looked like she'd been hit. Victoria was shaking her head, over and over. That's not fair, she whispered. You're taking things out of context. No, I said. I'm providing context. You told people I was a monster. I'm showing them I'm not. She looked at me with something I'd never seen before. Hatred, maybe. Or fear. Why? She asked. Why did you do this? Because, I said, you were building a case to destroy me. And I needed to protect myself. Dr. Crowley cleared her throat. She looked shaken, but she was trying to regain control of the session. This is highly irregular, she said. I need time to think about how to proceed. I can send you copies of everything, I said. For your records. Victoria's laugh was bitter. Of course you can. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I hadn't, actually. I'd just been scared. Scared enough to be thorough. Dr. Crowley asked us both to sit down. Victoria righted her chair and sank into it. Her face was blotchy, her mascara smeared. I felt a pang of something. Not quite sympathy. Maybe sadness for what we used to be. The session ended early. Dr. Crowley said she needed to review everything before we continued. She looked at Victoria with an expression that had lost all its earlier warmth. We left separately. Victoria walked out first, fast, her purse clutched against her chest. I stayed behind for a moment. Dr. Crowley looked at me. This must have been very difficult for you, she said. It was, I answered. She nodded slowly. I'll be in touch. I drove home in silence. The USB drive was back in my pocket, lighter now that its contents had been shared. I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollowed out. That night, Victoria didn't come home. She texted around 8. Staying at Rachel's. Need space. I replied with a simple okay. I made dinner for one. Sat at the table where we used to sit together. The house felt enormous and empty. I thought about the recordings still on my hard drive. Hours and hours of a marriage dissolving in real time. Evidence that I wasn't the villain she'd made me out to be. But also evidence of how far apart we'd drifted. How little we'd fought to stay close. The next morning, Rachel called. Her voice was tight. Daniel, we need to talk. I know, I said. I'm sorry you're in the middle of this. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I didn't expect. I listened to some of the recordings Tori played for me. The ones you gave Dr. Crowley. My heart sank. Victoria had gotten copies somehow. Probably from Dr. Crowley's office before she left. And, Rachel asked. And, Rachel said slowly, I don't know what to think anymore. I've known you for 12 years, Daniel. You've always been good to my sister. I never saw any signs of abuse. But she's been so convincing. So upset. I wanted to believe her because she's my sister. But those recordings. Her voice trailed off. I didn't say anything. I just waited. Why didn't you tell us? Rachel asked. When you knew she was lying. Why did you let it get this far? Because I kept hoping I was wrong, I said. I kept hoping there was an explanation. That maybe I was the problem and I just couldn't see it. And by the time I knew for sure, she'd already told so many people that I figured I needed proof. Not just my word against hers. Rachel sighed. This is such a mess. I know. What are you going to do now? I don't know, I said honestly. I guess that depends on what Victoria does. She's talking about divorce, Rachel said. I figured. And she's talking about taking you for everything. Claiming abuse in the filing. I rubbed my eyes. I have recordings that prove otherwise. I know, Rachel said. That's why I'm calling. Daniel, I think you should get a lawyer. Today. Not next week. Today. I already have one, I said. Good. Use them. Because my sister's not thinking straight right now. She's angry and she's scared and she's going to come at you hard. Rachel paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. This shouldn't have happened. No, I agreed. It shouldn't have. After we hung up, I sat in my office and stared at the wall. The recordings had done their job. They'd proven I wasn't abusive. They'd exposed the affair. They'd protected me from a narrative that could have ruined my life. But they hadn't fixed anything. Victoria and I were still broken. Maybe more broken than before. Because now there was no pretending. No room for reconciliation. Just evidence and lawyers and the slow dismantling of 12 years. I opened my laptop and emailed my attorney. Her name was Catherine Wells. She'd handled my business contracts for years. I'd told her about the situation 2 weeks earlier, when I first realized how serious Victoria's accusations were becoming. I attached the full set of recordings with a brief note. She'll likely file soon. I need to be ready. Catherine responded within an hour. Come to my office tomorrow morning. 9 sharp. We'll go through everything. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the moment in Dr. Crowley's office when Victoria's face changed. When she realized I had proof. There was something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not just anger. Desperation. Like she'd built an entire escape plan on a foundation of lies and watched it crumble in real time. I wondered if she'd known, on some level, that I was recording. If that's why she'd been so careful to have her conversations with Marcus when I wasn't home. Why she'd built her narrative slowly, methodically, coaching herself into the role of victim. Or maybe she'd just gotten sloppy. Overconfident. Thinking I was too distracted, too trusting, too weak to fight back. Men my age know that underestimation can be a gift. People reveal themselves when they think you're not watching. Victoria had revealed everything. And now she had to live with the consequences. The next morning I met Catherine at her office in downtown Boston. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. She'd been through 3 divorces herself, which made her both sympathetic and ruthlessly practical. Sit, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. I sat. She had a notepad in front of her, already filled with notes. I've reviewed the recordings, she said. All of them. This is airtight, Daniel. She can't claim abuse with this evidence. Not successfully. What about the affair? I asked. Does that matter in Massachusetts? Not as much as you'd think, she said. We're a no-fault divorce state. But it matters for other things. Credibility. Asset division. Custody if there were kids involved. We don't have kids, I said. I know, Catherine replied. Which simplifies things. But it also means she'll go after assets. The house, your business, savings. Everything. I expected that. She leaned back in her chair. Here's what's going to happen. She'll file first. She'll try to control the narrative publicly. She'll paint herself as the victim who finally escaped. Your job is to stay quiet. Don't defend yourself on social media. Don't explain to mutual friends. Let the recordings speak for you when the time comes. That's going to be hard, I said. People are already choosing sides. Let them, Catherine said. Anyone who matters will wait for the facts. The rest aren't worth keeping. She pulled out a document. I'm filing a countersuit today. We'll include a request for the court to review the recordings as evidence of her false allegations. We'll also document the affair for the record. Even if it doesn't impact the divorce settlement, it establishes a pattern of dishonesty. What about her? I asked. Will she get in trouble for lying? Catherine shook her head. Not criminally, no. Unless she files a police report claiming abuse, which she hasn't done. If she does that and we can prove she lied, then yes. That's filing a false report. But for now, this stays in civil court. I nodded. What do I do in the meantime? Live your life, Catherine said. Go to work. See friends. Don't engage with her directly unless it's through me or documented text. And Daniel. Yes. Don't feel guilty for protecting yourself. You did the right thing. I left her office feeling steadier. Not good, exactly. But clear. Like I'd finally stopped treading water and found solid ground. Over the next week, things moved fast. Victoria filed for divorce on a Thursday. The papers cited irreconcilable differences and requested half of everything. My business, the house, retirement accounts. She also filed for spousal support, claiming she'd sacrificed her career to support mine. That last part almost made me laugh. She'd worked throughout our marriage. Her event planning business had been doing well. She hadn't sacrificed anything except honesty. Catherine filed the countersuit the next day. It included a formal request for the court to review evidence of false allegations and infidelity. The recordings were submitted under seal, which meant they'd be available to the judge but not the public. Yet, word spread fast. By Monday, mutual friends were reaching out. Some asking what happened. Some taking sides without asking. I got a text from my friend Eric, a guy I'd known since college. Heard about the divorce. You okay? Not really, I wrote back. But I will be. He called instead of texting back. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to talk yet. My phone buzzed with messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone wanted details. Everyone had opinions. I ignored most of them. The ones that mattered, the ones from people who actually knew me, I responded to with simple honesty. It's complicated. I'll explain when I can. The hard part was work. My business depended on trust. Cybersecurity clients need to believe you're stable, reliable, not someone whose personal life is falling apart in public. I had a meeting with my 3 biggest clients that week. I told them the truth, or enough of it. Personal issues, I said. Nothing that affects my work. Everything's on schedule. They nodded. Asked if I needed anything. I said no. One of them, a guy named Tom who ran a financial services firm, pulled me aside after. My wife and I went through a rough patch a few years ago, he said. Different situation, but I get it. If you need to talk, I'm around. I appreciated that more than I could say. By the second week, the silence from Victoria was unnerving. No texts. No calls. Nothing. Rachel told me she was staying with her and barely leaving the bedroom. She's a mess, Rachel said. I don't know what to tell her. You don't have to tell her anything, I said. This is between me and her now. Rachel hesitated. Daniel, she's saying you blindsided her. That you weaponized her own words. Did I asked. I honestly don't know anymore, Rachel said. Maybe. But she put you in an impossible position. What were you supposed to do? Exactly, I said. Then the letter arrived. It came via certified mail, which meant I had to sign for it. The return address was a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a cease and desist order. Victoria's lawyer was demanding I stop distributing the recordings. They claimed I was violating her privacy and causing emotional distress. I forwarded it to Catherine. She called me an hour later, laughing. This is garbage, she said. They're trying to intimidate you. Ignore it. Can they do anything? I asked. Not unless you're posting the recordings online or playing them for people who aren't directly involved in the case. You're not, right? No, I said. I've only shared them with you and Dr. Crowley. Then there's nothing to worry about. This is posturing. They know they're in trouble and they're scrambling. That made me feel better. A little. But the letter also told me something important. Victoria wasn't backing down. She was doubling down. Catherine filed a motion to dismiss the cease and desist. She also submitted a formal complaint about Victoria's lawyer attempting to suppress evidence in an ongoing case. I didn't hear the outcome of that for another week. In the meantime, life felt like it was happening to someone else. I went through the motions. Work. Gym. Groceries. I avoided places I knew Victoria might be. I stopped going to our usual coffee shop, our favorite restaurant, the park where we used to walk on weekends. Boston felt smaller. Like every corner held a memory I didn't want to touch. My sister called from Oregon. She'd heard through the family grapevine. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Define okay," I said. She laughed, but it was sad. "Mom's worried." "Tell her I'm fine." "Are you?" my sister asked. "Not yet," I said. "But I'm working on it." "What do you need?" "Honestly," I said. "I need this to be over." "It will be," she said. "And when it is, you're coming out here. I'm taking you hiking and we're not talking about any of this." Deal. The court date for the preliminary hearing was set for mid-July. Catherine said it would be procedural, mostly just setting timelines and addressing any immediate issues. But it was also when the judge would decide whether to allow the recordings as evidence. "That's the big one," Catherine said. "If the judge rules them inadmissible, we lose our leverage." "What are the chances of that?" I asked. "Low," she said. "But not zero. Judges can be unpredictable, especially around privacy issues." I tried not to think about it. But it sat in the back of my mind like a stone. The week before the hearing, I got a call from Dr. Crowley. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. "Daniel," she said. "I wanted to reach out before this goes any further." "Okay. I've been thinking about our last session. About what you shared. And I think you should know that I've submitted my own report to the court." My stomach dropped. "What kind of report?" "A professional assessment," she said. "Based on what I observed and what I heard in those recordings. I'm obligated to report if I believe someone has made false allegations in a therapeutic setting. I'm sorry it came to this." "Don't be," I said. "You're doing the right thing." There was a pause. "For what it's worth," she said, "I believe you. I think Victoria was in pain and made some very poor choices. But that doesn't excuse what she did." "Thank you," I said. "It means a lot." After we hung up, I sat down hard. Dr. Crowley's report would carry weight. Therapists don't make those kinds of statements lightly. It was one more piece of evidence in my favor. One more crack in Victoria's story. The preliminary hearing was on a Wednesday. I wore a suit. Catherine met me outside the courthouse. "You ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be." Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I expected. Victoria was already there with her lawyer, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s. Victoria didn't look at me. The judge entered and we all stood. He was older, gray-haired, with the kind of face that had seen everything and wasn't impressed by much. He reviewed the filings quickly, then looked up. "This is a divorce case with some unusual elements," he said. "I've reviewed the initial complaints and the counterfilings. I've also reviewed a portion of the submitted recordings." He paused. "And I've read Dr. Crowley's report." Victoria's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to move to have those recordings excluded. They were obtained without my client's knowledge." The judge looked at her. In the state of Massachusetts, recordings made in one's own home and common areas do not require two-party consent. The recordings in question meet that standard. Motion denied. Victoria's face crumpled. Her lawyer sat back down. The judge continued. "However, I am ordering both parties to cease any further distribution of these recordings outside of legal proceedings. They are to be treated as sealed evidence." "Understood." We both said yes. "Good," the judge said. I'm setting a trial date for October 15th. In the meantime, I'm ordering mediation. You'll meet with a court-appointed mediator to attempt to resolve this without trial. He looked at both of us. I strongly encourage you to settle. Trials are expensive, exhausting, and rarely leave anyone feeling vindicated. Think carefully about what you really want from this. And with that, the hearing was over. We filed out. In the hallway, Victoria finally looked at me. Her eyes were red. "You're really going to drag this out," she said. "I didn't start this," I replied. She shook her head. "You recorded me, Daniel. 4 months. Like I was some kind of criminal." "You lied about me," I said. 4 months. To therapists, to friends, to your family. You tried to make people think I was abusive. What was I supposed to do?" Her voice broke. "You were supposed to fight for us. Instead you just collected evidence." I stared at her. "I did fight," I said quietly. "I fought by protecting myself from lies." "That's not the same thing." "Maybe not," I said. "But it's what I had left." She walked away. Her lawyer followed. Catherine put a hand on my shoulder. "You did good in there." "I don't feel good," I said. "You will," she said. Eventually. The mediation was scheduled for early August. I didn't have high hopes. But I showed up anyway, in a neutral office with beige walls and uncomfortable chairs. The mediator was a woman named Sandra, calm and professional. She explained the process, then asked us each to state what we wanted from the divorce. Victoria went first. "I want what I'm entitled to," she said. "Half the house. Half is business. Spousal support for at least 5 years. I built my life around this marriage. I deserve compensation for what I'm losing." Sandra turned to me. "Daniel. I want a fair division of assets," I said. "I don't want to give her half my business because she didn't build it. She supported it, but support isn't ownership. I'm willing to negotiate on the house and other assets. But I won't be punished financially for something I didn't do." Sandra nodded. "Let's start with the business." The mediation lasted 4 hours. We went through financials, timelines, contributions. Victoria's lawyer argued that her emotional support and household management freed me up to focus on work. Catherine argued that emotional support doesn't equate to equity. By the end, we'd reached a tentative agreement on some things. The house would be sold and proceeds split evenly. Retirement accounts would be divided. But the business remained a sticking point. Victoria wanted 30%. I offered 10%. We left without resolution. Sandra scheduled another session for 2 weeks later. In the car, Catherine said, "She's not going to get 30%. The judge won't award that. But she might get 15%. Can you live with that?" "I don't want to," I said. "But I will if it means this ends." "Good," Catherine said. "Because dragging this to trial will cost you more than 15%. I knew she was right. But it still felt like losing. The second mediation session went better. Victoria came in quieter, less combative. I think her lawyer had talked sense into her. We agreed on 15% of the business, to be paid out over 3 years. We agreed on splitting the house sale. We agreed on no spousal support, since she had her own income and career. By the end, we had a settlement. Sandra drew up the paperwork. We both signed. Just like that, 12 years ended with signatures on a dotted line. Afterward, in the parking lot, Victoria stopped me. "Daniel." I turned. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what I said. About the abuse." I was scared and I didn't know what else to do. I just looked at her. "I loved you," she said. "I really did. But somewhere along the way, I stopped knowing how to be married to you. And instead of talking about it, I ran." I nodded. "I get that. But you didn't have to destroy me to leave." I know, she whispered. I know. We stood there for a moment. Two people who used to share everything, now strangers in a parking lot. Take care of yourself, I said. You too. She walked to her car. I watched her drive away. And I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. It was over. The settlement finalized in September. The house sold faster than expected to a young couple who reminded me of Victoria and me a decade ago. Full of optimism and plans. I hoped they'd have better luck. I moved into a smaller place in Cambridge, a 2-bedroom condo with exposed brick and windows that let in enough light to make mornings bearable. It was strange learning to live alone again after 12 years. Strange in a good way, mostly. I could leave dishes in the sink without guilt. I could work until midnight without explaining myself. I could eat cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row and nobody commented. Freedom felt quiet. The business transition took longer. Victoria's 15% payout was structured over 3 years, which gave me breathing room. My clients never knew how close things had come to falling apart. I hired another consultant to help with the workload, a sharp woman named Maya who asked good questions and didn't pry into my personal life. Work became a refuge again instead of an escape. By October, the dust had mostly settled. The mutual friends had sorted themselves into camps. Some stayed in touch with me. Some chose Victoria. Most just faded away, uncomfortable with the mess and unwilling to navigate it. I didn't blame them. Divorce makes people confront their own relationship fears. It's easier to step back than to look too closely. My friend Eric stayed, though. He started showing up at my place on Friday nights with beer and takeout. We'd watch whatever game was on and not talk about anything important. It was exactly what I needed. One night in late October, he asked the question I'd been avoiding. Do you miss her? I thought about it. I miss who I thought she was, I said. I miss the idea of us. But the actual her? The one who lied and built a case to destroy me? No. I don't miss that. Eric nodded. That's healthy, man. A lot of guys would still be hung up. I'm too tired to be hung up, I said. And too aware of what she's capable of. He took a long drink of beer. You ever gonna date again? Eventually, I said. But not for a while. I need to figure out who I am without her first. Smart, Eric said. Then he changed the subject to the Patriots game and we didn't talk about Victoria again. The recordings sat on my hard drive, backed up in 3 locations. I thought about deleting them. Catherine had advised keeping them for at least 5 years in case Victoria tried to reopen anything. But looking at those files made my chest tight. They represented months of my life spent documenting betrayal instead of living. One Saturday in November, I sat at my desk and clicked through the folders. Hundreds of hours of conversations. Of lies being built brick by brick. Of a marriage ending in slow motion. I copied everything to a secure cloud storage in an external drive I locked in my safe. Then I deleted the files from my laptop. Not to forget. But to stop carrying them around like open wounds. The next morning I woke up and felt lighter. Dr. Crowley reached out in December. She wanted to know if I'd be interested in continuing therapy, individually this time. To process everything that had happened. I said yes. Her office felt different without Victoria there. Less like a battlefield. More like a space where I could actually think. We talked about trust. About how to rebuild it after someone you loved weaponized your vulnerabilities. About how recording someone feels like both protection and violation, and how to sit with that complexity. She asked if I regretted it. The recordings. Some days, I said. It feels like I turned my marriage into a surveillance operation. But if I hadn't, I'd be the one labeled as abusive. I'd have lost my business, my reputation, everything. So no. I don't regret protecting myself. But I regret needing to. That's fair, she said. Trauma responses aren't always pretty. Sometimes survival looks like things we'd rather not have done. I kept seeing her through the winter. Slowly, things came into focus. I realized I had been so focused on being a good husband by traditional metrics, providing, being present, being steady, that I'd stopped checking in emotionally. I'd assumed if the logistics of our life worked, the relationship did too. Victoria had done her own kind of assuming. That I should just know what she needed without her saying it. That if I loved her, I'd read her mind. We'd both been playing roles instead of being honest. And when honesty got too hard, she'd chosen deception. I'd chosen documentation. Neither of us had chosen courage. That realization didn't excuse what she did. But it helped me understand how we got there. By spring, I felt ready to close the chapter. Not forget it. Just stop living in it. I started going out more. Accepted invitations I would have declined 6 months earlier. Went to dinner parties and didn't feel like I had to explain my story to strangers. I even went on a date. Her name was Allison. We met through a mutual friend at a gallery opening. She was an architect, funny and straightforward. We got coffee. Then dinner. Then coffee again. It didn't turn into anything serious, but it reminded me that connection was still possible. That not everyone had an agenda. That sometimes people were just who they said they were. In April, a year after I'd first heard Victoria on the phone with Marcus, I got an unexpected message. It was from Marcus himself. I almost deleted it without reading. But curiosity is a strange thing. The message was short. Daniel, I know you don't want to hear from me. I wouldn't want to hear from me either. But I wanted you to know that Tori and I aren't together anymore. We tried, after everything. But it turned out we didn't actually work outside of secrecy and drama. I also wanted to say I'm sorry. Not for your forgiveness. I don't deserve that. But because you should hear it. What we did was selfish and cruel. You didn't deserve any of it. I hope you're doing okay. I read it 3 times. Tried to find anger. Found mostly indifference. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. He'd made his choices. So had Victoria. I'd made mine. We'd all have to live with them. That same week, I ran into Victoria's sister Rachel at a coffee shop in Brookline. We saw each other at the same time. For a second, I thought about leaving. But she walked over. Daniel, she said. Hey. Rachel looked tired. Older than I remembered. Can we talk for a minute? She asked. Sure, I said. We sat at a corner table. She ordered tea. I ordered black coffee. How are you? She asked. Good, I said. Actually good. Not just saying it. She smiled. I'm glad. And you? I asked. How's Victoria? Rachel sighed. She's struggling. She and Marcus didn't last. She's back living with me temporarily while she figures things out. I nodded. Didn't know what to say to that. Rachel stirred her tea. She knows she messed up, Daniel. She knows what she did was wrong. She's in therapy now. Actually dealing with her stuff instead of blaming everyone else. That's good, I said. I meant it. I don't hate her, Rachel said suddenly. I know what she did. I know how bad it was. But she's still my sister. I get that, I said. You don't have to justify it. Rachel looked at me. You're a better person than most people would be in your situation. I don't know about that, I said. I just don't have the energy for hate anymore. She nodded. Then she asked the question I'd been waiting for. Do you think you'll ever forgive her? I thought about it. The real answer, not the polite one. I don't think forgiveness is the right word, I said. I'm not carrying anger around. I'm not wishing bad things for her. But I also don't need to absolve her. What she did had consequences. She's living with them. I'm living with mine. That's just how it is. Rachel's eyes were wet. That's fair, she said. We finished our drinks. Talked about lighter things. Her job. My business. The spring weather. When we parted ways outside, she hugged me. Take care of yourself, she said. You too, I replied. Walking back to my car, I realized something. I'd spent months waiting to feel like myself again. Waiting for the anger to fade, for the betrayal to stop stinging, for some moment of closure that would make everything make sense. But closure isn't a moment. It's a series of small choices. Choosing not to check Victoria's social media. Choosing to focus on work that mattered. Choosing to show up for friends. Choosing to believe that being deceived didn't make me foolish, it made me human. The recordings had served their purpose. They'd protected me when words wouldn't have been enough. They'd proven that my reality wasn't the fiction someone else tried to sell. But they couldn't heal me. That part one had to do myself. In May, I took my first real vacation in 2 years. Flew out to Oregon to visit my sister like I'd promised. We hiked through forests that smelled like rain and earth. We sat by a river and didn't talk about Victoria or divorce or recordings. We just existed together in the quiet. One evening, sitting on her back porch with a beer, my sister asked me what I'd learned from all of it. That people are complicated, I said. That love isn't enough if you're not honest. That protecting yourself isn't the same as being vindictive. And that sometimes the hardest thing is knowing when to stop fighting for something that's already gone. She clinked her beer against mine. To new chapters, she said. To new chapters, I agreed. I flew home feeling reset. Not fixed. Just ready. Ready to build something new that wasn't defined by what I'd lost. Ready to trust again, carefully, with eyes open. Ready to stop being the man who recorded his wife and start being the man who learned from it. The business grew. I hired 2 more consultants and started taking on bigger clients. Work that challenged me instead of just keeping me busy. I bought new furniture for the condo. Actual furniture, not the hand-me-downs and quick purchases I'd made when I first moved in. I started cooking real meals again. Joined a gym. Read books that had nothing to do with cybersecurity or divorce law. I built a life that was mine. In June, I got an email from Dr. Crowley. She wanted to know if I'd be willing to speak to a professional group about navigating false allegations with evidence and integrity. To share my experience in a way that might help others. I thought about it for a week. Then I said yes. The talk was in August, at a conference for family therapists. I stood at a podium in front of 80 people and told my story. Not for sympathy. Not for vindication. But because someone in that room might be sitting across from a man or woman being falsely accused, and they needed to know that documentation isn't paranoia. It's protection. Afterward, 3 therapists came up to me. One had a client going through something similar. Another had wrongly believed an accusation years ago and felt terrible about it. The third just shook my hand and said thank you for being honest. Driving home, I realized I'd stopped thinking of myself as a victim. I was just someone who'd survived something hard and come out intact. That felt like enough. By fall, almost 2 years after the night I'd first heard Victoria's voice on a recording, I went on another date. Her name was Claire. She was a teacher, warm and direct. We met for dinner and talked for 3 hours. At the end of the night, she asked if I wanted to see her again. I did. We took it slow. I was upfront about my divorce, about what I'd been through. She listened without judgment. Told me about her own past, a broken engagement that taught her to value honesty above romance. We fit together in a way that felt easy. Not perfect. Just real. One night, a few months in, she asked about the recordings. If I regretted making them. I thought about all the ways that question had been asked before. All the ways I'd answered. This time I said something new. I regret needing them, I said. I regret that my marriage became something I had to document to survive. But I don't regret protecting myself. And I learned something important. That truth matters. Even when it's ugly. Especially then. Claire nodded. That makes sense, she said. Then she changed the subject and we moved on. That's when I knew. I'd finally reached the other side. Not unchanged. But whole. The recordings still exist. Locked away in a safe in a cloud server. I don't listen to them anymore. Don't need to. They did their job. They proved that I wasn't the monster someone tried to paint me as. They gave me back my reputation, my business, my sense of self. But more than that, they taught me something I carry with me now. That sometimes the quietest response is the strongest. That evidence speaks louder than emotion. That protecting yourself isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Victoria's accusations could have destroyed me. In another version of this story, they would have. But I'd been careful. Methodical. I'd trusted my instincts when something felt wrong and I'd acted to protect myself before the damage became irreversible. Some people called it cold. Calculating. Maybe it was. But it was also survival. And I'd learned the hard way that sometimes survival requires precision. Not rage. Not revenge. Just a clear-eyed understanding of what's at stake and the willingness to defend it. I don't tell this story often. Most people don't need to know the details of how my marriage ended. But when someone asks, when a friend confides that they're going through something similar, I tell them what I learned. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Protect yourself before you worry about being nice. And know that the truth, when you have proof, is a shield nothing can break. That's not cynicism. It's realism. And after everything, realism is what kept me standing. Looking back now, I see the whole arc. The discovery. The betrayal. The decision to record. The months of living with knowledge I couldn't share. The confrontation. The legal battle. The settlement. The slow rebuilding. It all feels like a different person's life. Someone I used to be. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm just wiser. And careful. And grateful that I trusted myself enough to gather the evidence that saved me. Because in the end, that's what it came down to. Not love. Not marriage. Not even truth in the abstract. Just evidence. Clear. Undeniable. Mine. The recordings proved I wasn't abusive. But they also proved something else. That I was strong enough to do what needed to be done, even when it was hard. Even when it hurt. That's the real story. Not the affair. Not the lies. Not even the recordings themselves. The story is that I survived. And that's enough. 3 years later, I'm still here. Still running my business. Still building relationships with people who value honesty. Still learning to trust again, slowly, carefully, but genuinely. Victoria and I haven't spoken since the divorce finalized. I've heard through mutual acquaintances that she's doing okay. That she's learned from what happened. I hope that's true. Not for me. For her. Because carrying that kind of weight, those lies and consequences, that's a heavy burden. And nobody deserves to carry it forever. As for me, I'm lighter now. The recordings are filed away. The marriage is over. The chapter is closed. And I'm finally ready to write new ones. Not defined by what happened. Just informed by it. That's the difference time and clarity make. You stop being the person something happened to. You become the person who learned from it and moved forward. And that person, the one I am now, is someone I can respect. Someone I can build a life with. That's what matters. Not vindication. Not revenge. Just the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you protected yourself, told the truth, and survived. The recordings changed everything. But they didn't define me. I did that. And I'll keep doing it. One careful, honest choice at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.